Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON BBD founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Sotadasa Shri Srimad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Ananta Gaudiya Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Shri Hajadas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath, Shamakunda, Radhakunda, Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki jai. Ganga Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulasi Devi Maharani ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 32, entitled Entanglement and Fruitive Activities, and we're up to text 17, which has no purport. So I will chant the Sanskrit to that myself and read the translation, and then we'll do text 18 together. Okay? Rajasā kuṇṭha-manasaḥ kāma-ātmāno jitendriyāḥ pitṭn yajanty anudinam gṛheṣv abhiratāśayāḥ. Translation. Such persons, impelled by the mode of passion, are full of anxieties and always aspire for sense gratification due to uncontrolled senses. They worship the forefathers and are busy day and night improving the economic condition of their family, social or national life. Okay, so text 18 we could do together. Trai-vargikās te puruṣā vimukhā hari-medhasaḥ kathaāyāṁ kathanīyoru vikramasya madhudviṣaḥ trai-vargikās te puruṣā trai-vargikās te puruṣā vimukhā hari-medhasaḥ vimukhā hari-medhasaḥ kathaāyāṁ kathanīyoru kathanīyoru vikramasya madhudviṣaḥ vikramasya madhudviṣaḥ trai-vargikās te puruṣā vimukhā hari-medhasaḥ kathaāyāṁ kathanīyoru vikramasya madhudviṣaḥ. Vaishnavis. Trai-vargikās, interested in the three elevating processes. Te, those. Puruṣā, persons. Vimukhā, not interested. Hari-medhasaḥ, of Lord Hari. Kathaāyāṁ, in the pastimes. Kathanīyoru, worth chanting of. Vikramasya, whose excellent prowess. Madhudviṣaḥ, the killer of the Madhu demon. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Such persons are called trai-vargikās because they are interested in the three elevating processes. They are averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can give relief to the conditioned soul. They are not interested in the Supreme Personality's pastimes, which are worth hearing because of His transcendental prowess. Purport. According to Vedic thought, there are four elevating principles, namely, religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Persons who are simply interested in material enjoyment make plans to execute prescribed duties. They are interested in the three elevating processes of religious rituals, economic elevation, and sense enjoyment. By developing their economic condition, they can enjoy material life. Materialistic persons, therefore, are interested in those elevating processes, which are called trai-vargikās. Tri means three, vargika means elevating processes. Such materialistic persons are never attracted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, they are antagonistic towards Him. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is here described as hari-medhasaḥ, or He who can deliver one from the cycle of birth and death. Materialistic persons are never interested in hearing about the marvelous pastimes of the Lord. They think they are fictions and stories, and that the Supreme Godhead is also a man of material nature. They are not fit for advancing in devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Such materialistic persons are interested in newspaper stories, novels, and imaginary dramas. The factual activities of the Lord, such as Lord Krishna's acting in the battle of Kurukshetra, or the activities of the Pandavas, or the Lord's activities in Vrindavana Dwarka, are related in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which are full of the activities of the Lord. But materialistic persons who engage in elevating their position in the material world are not interested in such activities of the Lord. They may be interested in the activities of a great politician or a great rich man of this world, but they are not interested in the transcendental activities of the Lord. Om Gina Timidam Dasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Tamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayamupakaramayam Dirapti Swaparantikam. So when I was preparing for this class, reading this purport, I have to admit I was feeling a bit uncomfortable at certain points, because Prabhupada says here, materialistic persons are never interested in hearing about the marvelous pastimes of the Lord. They think they are fictions and stories, and that the Supreme Godhead is also a man of material nature. And then in the translation it says, referring to these people, it says they are not interested in the Supreme Personality of Godhead's pastimes, which are worth hearing because of His transcendental prowess. So, I was thinking to myself, well, I didn't read Krishna book last night. I didn't read Krishna book the night before, or the night before, or that. So, I was thinking, well, okay, I'm not in this category, but I've got a ways to go to become somebody who's really appreciating the pastimes of the Lord like they're supposed to be appreciated. Really be interested in them. Prabhupada's saying here, they think they're fictions and stories that the Supreme Person. So if we're not thinking they're fictions and stories, we should really be relishing. We should really be interested in. And like Prabhupada gave an instruction, we should read Krishna book every night. Anybody read Krishna book last night? Raise your hand. Anybody read Krishna book the night before? No. Night before? Okay, so I don't feel so bad. We're all in the same boat. We've got a ways to go, But, so what do? How do we respond to that? As I said, initially I was feeling really uncomfortable, and I feel like, wow, what kind of devotee am I? I'm not so attracted. Well, Prabhupada gave in 1970, I think this was 1975 in Mayapur. Devotees came from all over the world to the Mayapur festival. Prabhupada was very pleased. And Prabhupada said this, he said, now we have got this center, Mayapur. We have got hundreds of centers, but this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birthplace. You have come from very, very distant place all over the world. So here you simply take prasadam, chant Hare Krishna 24 hours, then your life is successful. It is not at all difficult. And here it comes. But we are so stubborn that we do not take to Krishna consciousness. That is our misfortune. But still, as we struggle against misfortune to become fortunate in the material world, similarly, we have to struggle against misfortune to become fortunate in spiritual life. So in other words, Prabhupada's saying, you got to struggle. That's the response. In other words, if I'm not up to the standard, okay, don't get disheartened and think, well, I might as well throw in the towel. No, we have to struggle. Prabhupada's saying, just as we struggle against misfortune to become fortunate in the material world, we have to struggle against misfortune to become fortunate in spiritual life. Struggle. It's there. He goes on to say, Maya is very strong, but there's also a way. There's always also the way to how to get out of the clutches of Maya. So that's, the program is given us. That we have to, do these things that Prabhupada has given us. Rise early, chant, etc. Worship the deities, engage in service. As our temple president Srivastava is very fond of quoting, there's a very famous verse in the first canto, second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, text 16. It goes, Shru Shru Shro Shradhana Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtana Shevanat. That by rendering service to those who are free from all vice, the great souls like the spiritual master, great service is done. And it goes, Vasudeva Kataruchi. By such service, one acquires an affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. In other words, you get an inclination. That's the reward. You try to follow the instructions of the spiritual master and engage in his service, and the result of that will be from within. You'll start feeling more of an attraction, a desire to hear the messages of Vasudeva, like that. So that's the basic program. And so once again, we shouldn't be disheartened. This is it's par for the course. It's part of advancing in devotional service. In the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada gives this nice instruction. He quotes this. This is a chapter. The chapter is entitled Techniques of Hearing and Chanting, but a subsection is entitled Expecting the Lord's Mercy. So Prabhupada quotes the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 14, text 8. He says, this is Lord Brahma praying to Krishna. He says, my dear Lord, any person who is constantly awaiting your causeless mercy to be bestowed upon him and goes on suffering the resultant actions of his misdeeds, offering you respectful obeisances from the core of his heart, is surely eligible to become liberated, for it has become his rightful claim. So, we're suffering the resultant actions of our past misdeeds in the form of adi-atmic, adi-bautic, and adi-daivik. So adi-atmic is mysteries of the mind. Our own mind is, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, your mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy. So in the neophyte stage of devotional service, our own mind can be our worst enemy because, it's contaminated. We don't have an attraction for, hearing the pastimes of Krishna. But we have to, just be tolerant. That's there, but don't don't let it freak you out. Just, okay, that's there, and we're going to engage in the process to deal with that. And in the purport, Prabhupada gives a little purport to that verse that he referred to there. He says, a devotee who is not perfectly freed from the resultant actions should therefore continue to act in Krishna consciousness seriously, even though there may be many impediments. And the impediment might be our own mind. Our mind, as Prabhupada said, is stubborn, not attracted to Krishna consciousness. So that's an impediment. And he goes on to say, when such impediments arise, he should simply think of Krishna and expect his mercy. That is the only solace. If a devotee passes his days in that spirit, it is certain that he is going to be promoted to the abode of the Lord. By such activities, he earns his claim to enter into the kingdom of God. The exact word used in this verse is dayabhak. Dayabhak refers to a son's becoming the lawful inheritor of the property of the father. In a similar way, a pure devotee who is prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulations in executing Krishna conscious duties becomes lawfully qualified to enter the transcendental abode. So you have to persevere. And Prabhupada himself acknowledged his nice purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila chapter 5, where Prabhupada acknowledges, that the initial difficulty in accepting knowledge that's coming down in the parampara. I'll read you this excerpt from a purport. This is text 14, chapter 5 of the Adi Lila. Prabhupada says, the disease of the modern civilized man is his disbelief in everything in the revealed scriptures. Faithless non-believers cannot make any progress in spiritual realization. Then he goes on to say, a bit further down, he says, revealed knowledge may in the beginning be unbelievable because of our paradoxical desire to verify everything with our teeny brains. But the speculative means of attaining knowledge is always imperfect. See, so notice our mind balks. It's that B-A-L-K-E-D, balks at, at some of this knowledge. It's because it seems like, what? How could that be true? Or that's too far out. But, so Prabhupada's acknowledging that, that's, we have this paradoxical desire to try to verify everything with our teeny brains. But he says the speculative means of attaining knowledge is always imperfect. The perfect knowledge propounded in the revealed scriptures is confirmed by the great acharyas, who have left ample commentations upon them. None of these acharyas has disbelieved in the Shastras. One who disbelieves in the Shastras is an atheist, and we should not consult an atheist, however great he may be. A staunch believer in the Shastras, with all their diversities, is the right person from whom to gather real knowledge. Such knowledge may seem inconceivable in the beginning, but when put forward by the proper authority, its meaning is revealed, and then one no longer has any doubts. So once again, if we just accept with faith what we're hearing and engage in the process as we make progress in Krishna consciousness, that it'll all be revealed that this is the truth, this is the correct way understanding. But once again, Prabhupada's, as I said, in that purport is acknowledging that initially it's difficult. Prabhupada actually, on another occasion, Prabhupada acknowledged how never that it was difficult for him to believe the statements, but difficult for him to explain. I'll give you, this is an example. Prabhupada was meeting with the Bhaktivedanta scientists, not just some devotees, and they were trying to work on, this model, the TOVP. The Temple of Vedic Planetarium was supposed to present a model of the universe as it's described in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And devotees were having a hard time. There was a group of devotees that were given that assignment, and they came back and told Prabhupada, I don't think this is not going to happen in this generation, But Prabhupada didn't want to give up on it. So I knew he was working with other devotees. And so on one occasion, Prabhupada asked the devotee to read a particular description from the 5th canto. And that devotee was reading a description of Mount Sumeru. And Mount Sumeru is right in the middle of Jambudvip, which according to the 5th canto is the central island of Bhumandala. And it's a little bit unusual. It's 2/3 of a million miles high, okay? and at the top it's quarter of a million miles wide. Okay, try to visualize this. 2/3 of a million miles high. We're on Earth here. The distance from here to the moon, according to scientists, is about 250,000 miles, just to give you an idea. So 2/3 of a million miles high, and at the top it's a quarter of a million miles wide. At the bottom it's only 1/8 of a million miles wide. And then there's like 80,000, certain amount of miles that it's in the ground. It's like an ice cream cone. It's like an ice cream cone stuck in the ground. Okay? That's the shape. It's 2/3 of a million. It's made of gold. It's 2/3 of a million miles high. It's a quarter million miles wide. It's like that, pericap. Okay? So, that devotee was reading that particular part of the Bhagavatam, the 5th canto. He wanted to hear it, which that was being described. So Prabhupada goes, after the devotee reads the description, he says, and it was not possible for me to digest. He laughs. He says, somebody else helped me. He says, I am a layman. I do not know. Tama Krishna asks, how did you write it? Prabhupada, that's somebody, Krishna helped me. He manufactured. And another devotee says, and these mountains, they extend to the beaches. It is considered, and then Prabhupada just said something again. He says, when I was writing, I was praying to Krishna that I do not actually accommodate all this knowledge. Please help me. Yes, that's all right. So Prabhupada, as I said, I'm not saying he believed in it, but he himself is admitting here, well, how do I explain this? So that people are going to be able to relate to it. And he felt like, Krishna helped him. So it's challenging. It's challenging. And but the duty of the devotee is to try to figure out how have faith, like Prabhupada didn't believe it, and just persevere with the process of devotional service and try to understand how it could be true, not how it's not true. An example of that, is some devotees who are with us, but there's a statement here. This is in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 8. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, as far as the living entities are concerned, they are impregnated into this material nature, and as a result of their past deeds, they take different positions. Thus, the activities of this material world begin. Listen to this. The activities of the different species of the living beings are begun from the very moment of creation. Okay? The activities of the different species of the living beings are begun from the very moment of creation. It is not that all is evolved. The different species of life are created immediately along with the universe. So, we don't believe in evolution. Okay? That's, Prabhupada makes that statement there. And so it's up to the devotees to show, well, this is what Prabhupada's saying, this is and this is true. So, Judah Karma was here with us. He spent the last 40 years of his life defending that statement. You have the theory of evolution, which says something like, okay, you have, by the theory of evolution initially, as introduced by Charles Darwin, was a theory about how the human species evolved, not the universe, not life, or the universe. It's just. And his idea was that, okay, you got human beings like us, and before them they were kind of like creatures that were not less human, and then before them less human, and the creatures have kind of evolved up to where we are now, and the process was mutation, natural selection. Mutation is just something that happens in nature, and then the creatures that got the mutation that enabled them to survive, they made it to the next generation, and the other ones kind of died off, and that's how we get to where we are. And he said, well, and that's my idea, and the proof of that is the fossil record. The fossil record, when we examine the fossil record, it's going to show that you got the modern humans, and just in the fossil in the stratas just below is going to show kind of the humans that are not quite as modern and less modern, and as you go down, less modern, less modern, less modern, less modern. And that's proof of the theory of evolution, how human beings evolved up. So, Judah Karma, Sadhuputta, the Bhaktivedanta Institute's devotees, they spent starting around 1985, the last 40 years, showing that, well, that's not the case. When you examine the fossil record, it doesn't show, evidence that less modern human beings, are there in the lower strata. It doesn't show that. Actually, it shows evidence for human beings like us and being present, not what to speak of like 300,000 years ago, like millions of years ago, even billions of years ago. See? So, that's this book, Extreme Human Antiquity, Further Investigations into Forbidden Archaeology. So, in other words, rather than, doubt the whole thing, and they actually took up the challenge, and they showed that you're showing, even on a material level, that this is not true. So, people like to think that, Papa was talking about people don't like this idea of taking knowledge from a higher authority, but that's really what's going on anyway. Who does I was a kid, okay? As a kid in school, they told me water freezes at 32 degrees. I never did the experiment. I never took took a pool of water and, went into a room that was 32 degrees and, checked it with the thermometer and waited to see that the water froze. In other words, you just take their word for it. Like, another thing I remember, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes forms. Somebody just told me that, and I was proudly thinking, yeah, that's true. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes forms. But how do I know that? How did that person who told me that know that? Did they do the experiment? What experiment is there, that you do to show that energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes? In other words, they don't do it's a parampara, for the most part, it's the same way. People are just believing what they're told by teachers who they themselves didn't perform those experiments. Nobody could perform all those experiments, that's science, but it's just knowledge just disseminated through communication from one human being to another. So the thing is that they cheat. They cheat just like politicians. It's not like politicians are telling you what really happens. Like just recently, there's this whole war with Israel and Iran and like that. So according to every other source, all around the world, Iran got the pants beat off them, But when the ceasefire was called, the political leaders of Iran declared that, okay, yeah, it was a glorious victory for Iran. We kind of like intimidated them and, bewildered them with our powerful military. They just told them anything they wanted the people to hear. It didn't correspond with the actual facts. So the point I'm making is that even in science, that happens. They're not necessarily completely truthful. They don't know. And even if they're confronted with evidence that shows that, what you're saying it's not supported by the evidence, they just stubbornly go, no. They just either ignore it or they just stubbornly continue on their way. So, yeah, we're conclusion being that we're in a good spot. We have knowledge that is coming down from. Actually, I made a note from some lecture I was listening to. Absolute knowledge descending through Krishna, through the parampara. That's what we have. We have absolute knowledge that's descending from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the parampara, to us. And we have the acharyas who have all, as we heard in that purport, completely, believed in that knowledge. None of the acharyas doubted it. We have a process by which that we can engage in to get direct perception, to experience it ourselves. And then there's devotees working in different ways, like I mentioned, to even support in their methods, empiric evidence that this picture of reality is more accurate than what we're getting from, outside the scientists and like that. So we just need to persevere, not let our minds get on top of us, get the better of us, just keep enthusiastically, faithfully engaging in devotional service, taking shelter of these advanced devotees that have done this nice work in support of the conclusions of the Vedic literatures, and in due course of time, everything will have no doubts. Everything will be revealed to us. We'll be relishing. There's another verse. Vayam tu na vatripyama yat uttama shloka vikrame yat shrinvatam rasa gyanam swadu swadu pade pade. So that's the sages of Naimisharanya. They're saying to Sutta Goswami, they're asking him, keep talking. Vayam tu na vatripyama Yashrinvatam rasa gyanam swadu swadu pade pade. What you're saying is getting sweeter at every moment, at every step. We're relishing what you're saying more and more. They have a taste. We'll come to that platform. We just have to keep going, and we'll come to that same platform as those sages of Naimisharanya, where it's swadu swadu pade pade. There are devotees in that category. Not a lot, but there are some devotees who are kind of in that category. One of them lives in San Diego, just for your information, Dravida Das. He's just got a taste, and for him it's just, Mukunda Dat was telling me the other day that he was talking with Dravida, and he was saying, when it's, because they chant their japa, they have the same schedule as us. So he chants his japa very intensely, and he goes, wow, when it's time to greet the deities, he says, I don't want to stop. He's chanting his japa, and he's getting a taste, and but the japa period is over now, it's time to greet the deities, and he was telling Mukunda that, no, I don't want to stop. Why? He's getting a taste. So there are devotees in that category. It takes, some work to get there, maybe lifetimes, but hopefully not. But it's not like it's not a reality or it's not possible. There are some devotees who are there. So we have to kind of keep going. Okay, so I'll stop there. Does anybody have any question? Yeah, Shyam Chandra.
Thank you for the nice class, Prabhu. So generally, when we talk about any Vedic education, knowledge, right? So traditionally, how it is done is that there are 18 branches of knowledge. There are Vedas, there are Vedangas, there are Upanishads, there is, Nirukta, Chandas, there are so many things. And it takes about 20 years just to finish that education, right? And that's when a person is strongly trained and he has a perfect knowledge and he has a strong conviction and he can answer any question. But right now, if you look at the current system, what we are doing here is that we don't have that much time and we just directly focus on Bhagavad Gita. It's like, the conclusion of all the Vedic knowledge. And even that, a lot of devotees doesn't even get time even to finish Bhakti Shastri, the basic thing which Prabhupada even emphasized, right? So the thing is that we can't really, replace the struggle one has to go through in acquiring the process of education, and every devotee must take out their time and spend energy in that regards, otherwise the shallowness will remain. The shallowness will remain. I mean, see, when you are trying to understand Krishna's pastimes, it's one thing to understand Krishna's pastimes, but it's a different thing to understand the other technical things like creation, universe, Meru mountain, all those things which a person's faith can shake, just to accept and understand it. So yeah, that's what I was thinking in my mind, why a person struggles to understand these things is because the way we are acquiring knowledge is very different from how we are supposed to acquire the knowledge.
Okay, so that's a comment.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Just an observation.
Yeah, that's a good comment. So we have to try to create that foundation by studying Prabhupada's books, right? And that, otherwise we'll remain shallow. It'll be a shallow understanding, correct? Did I understand you correctly? Yeah. Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha. One who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities, he, doesn't take birth again in the material world, but the Sanskrit words there is veti tattvataha. Means you have to understand the truth. It's not shallow understanding that's being referred to there. It's, you got to really understand. You got to go deep into it. Correct or no? Okay, thank you. Swaspu?
Yeah, and I was thinking of an example I read one time from Prabhupada where he said that just like if a man's eating, when you're eating, you're becoming happy, you're satisfied, but you keep eating, eventually you come to the point where you're full. And then when you're full, you don't want to eat anymore, no matter how gorgeous somebody may come out with some great preparation that you love, but you'll say, no, I'm full. So same thing with devotional service. If we just continue, even if we're not very intellectual or not very, fired up or anything, but if you just continue with Krishna consciousness, eventually you come to that point where you develop real knowledge. And then from that real knowledge, you can give up the material world. It's just a matter of staying there and waiting till you get full.
Right. And there's dozens and dozens of statements by Srila Prabhupada to that effect, right?
Yeah.
So many different things.
Yeah, this is Prabhupada made those examples.
Okay.
So
Anybody
we
else?
just have to stay on the path. Don't deviate, just stay, even if you're not full yet. Be patient and you'll get full. And eventually you'll give up the material world.
Yep. Anybody else have a question or comment? Oh, Prema Sankirtan.
Hare Krishna. Somebody's practicing Krishna consciousness maybe 50 years, he's sannyasi, and still after so many years and so many realization, what he got it, still there is some material attachments in behavior of some of the sannyasis we can see, that are like falling down, So how you can explain, what's the main remedy, what's the main source? Is mercy of Krishna, mercy of Prabhupada. They didn't cry enough for how to do these things and not happen to us.
Well, seems like you got to be really serious. Seems like you got to be really serious. I mean, Prabhupada, I remember one of my disciples are not scared enough about Maya, or something to that effect. I can't remember the exact words, but yeah, it's we have to be really conscientious about our practice, and because if we're not, Maya's always there. Maya's always there, and as soon as you, Papa, I'll give you the first example I heard, the first Bhagavatam class I heard, the person who's giving the class gave the example of swimming upstream. And they made the point that when you're swimming upstream, you got to continue swimming if you don't want to go downstream. You can't, let's take everybody raise your hand if you've been to Mayapur, you've been swimming in the Ganges. Okay, so everybody knows who's been there. It's got a current. The Ganges has a current. So you jump in and you start swimming up. So you want to swim upstream and you see there's like a branch hanging over or a big rock or something like that. And you're swimming upstream until you get to that rock and you can grab onto it, until you get to that branch and you grab onto it. You got to keep swimming. It's not like if you get halfway there and you think, okay, well, I'm halfway there. I'll take a break for a few minutes or whatever to catch my breath here. But as soon as you let up, you're going downstream. That's the nature of the thing. As soon as you let up, until you actually got your hand on that rock or got your hand on that branch, then as soon as you relax your efforts, downstream. So it seems like it's like that in devotional service. You got to be constantly trying. You can't, if you think, well, I've been working so hard for this X amount of time, now I'll just take a break, I'll relax a little bit, I'll watch this or I'll do that, and but right away, Maya's right there. She doesn't go, oh yeah, okay, that's okay. We'll get back into it after you take your break. No. As soon as we decide to ease up, Maya's right there to take us, Yeah. You had a question or comment? That makes sense. Is that our philosophy? Does that sound correct to our senior devotees here? Can't let up. Maya's right there. Yeah.
Actually, I changed my mind, but what I was going to say was similar to you, that Prabhupada said, you're either going up or down. No, we never really stand still. So we have to be really careful, because if we're not going up, we're probably going down.
Yeah, that's because the nature of the thing. It's like swimming upstream. As soon as you relax your efforts, when you're swimming upstream, the current will just take you downstream. So that's my understanding of how it works. Okay, thank you very much. Grunta Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.